Hello. I am the Linux Mitch. A few weeks ago, I made a video showing how to install DWM from source in Arch Linux using my new automated installer, or really it's just a bash script. And today, I'm going to show you how I made a separate bash script that works in Debian and Debian-based distributions. And I'm also going to show you what happens when you install it in Arch from the AUR and when you install it in a Debian-based distribution from the official repository. So let's get to it. If you didn't watch my video from a few weeks ago, this is it here. Installer DWM in Arch. And the reason why I put in Arch is because at the time, my installer on my bash script wasn't working in Debian and Debian-based distributions. So now I've made changes to it, and I have a separate installer, or really it's a separate bash script that will install DWM in Debian and Debian-based distributions with my configuration files. And it works. So I'm going to show you that later in the video. And the reason why I'm going to show you what happens when you install DWM from the AUR is because somebody wrote a comment in this video saying it's better to use package build, which is what you use when you're installing it from the AUR. So I want to do an installation from the AUR and show you what it's like. And I also want to do an installation in a Debian-based distribution from the official repository, or apt, again, to show you what it's like. And finally, I'm going to show you how to use my DWM installer, or my bash script that I made that works specifically in Debian and Debian-based distributions. So I have here, I have 3 virtual machines opened up. So in this virtual machine on the bottom, it's Arch Linux, pure Arch Linux that is. And I'm going to show you what happens when you install DWM from the AUR. Now, in my Arch Linux one, I'm not going to show you what happens when you install DWM with my installer or my bash script, because I did that in the video before. In this middle one is Linux Mint. It's a virtual machine of Linux Mint. And I'm going to show you what happens when you install DWM from the official repository. And then finally, this one is a virtual machine of Debian, pure Debian that is. And I'm going to show you how to use my installer to install DWM from source. And right now I'm in a virtual machine of Arch Linux with the awesome window manager. And I'm going to open up a terminal. And I'm going to do a Neofetch just to show you. So we can see I'm in a virtual machine of Arch Linux running the awesome window manager. And right now we're using 312 megabytes of RAM. So like I said, in this part of the video, I'm not going to use my installer or my bash script to install DWM because I did that in the video I just showed you that I made a week or two ago. But I'm going to go to the AUR. And whenever I install stuff from the AUR, I always make a directory. Let's cd into my AUR directory, and let's do git clone, insert, and let's cd into DWM. Let's ls it, and let's just clear the screen, and let's just make pkg sic. So like I said, somebody watched my last video that I made on DWM using my script or installer to install DWM from source, and that person said it's easier just to do this, to use package build, which I assume the person meant installing it from the AUR. Now the problem is when you install it from the AUR, you're not going to be able to configure it. And for DWM, it's always recommended to install it from source, asking for my password. And when you install it from source, you can use my installer or my bash script, or you can just do it yourself manually, right? So it's installed. So let's get out of here. And like I said, this is the awesome window manager. We're in Arch Linux. Let's quit it. So here it is up here, DWM. Put my password in, and this is what you get. There's no wallpaper. Well, you can install nitrogen. That's not installed yet. Now, if you use my bash script to install DWM in Arch Linux or in Debian, you're going to have nitrogen automatically installed. So you can see up here, the 9 workspaces, the font is really tiny. There's no clock. All it tells you up here in the top right, I don't even know if you can see it. It says DWM 6.5. It tells you the version of DWM you're on. So let's open up a terminal. Automatically install dmenu, and let's go to extern. And so if we go into .config, you see there's no DWM in there, okay? If we do an LL in our home directory, there's no DWM in there either. And if we clear the screen, if we go into CD, my AUR folder, DWM, ls it, and there we have a config file. Okay, here's a config file. This is the default or standard default config file. Let's vim into it. But the thing is that you can't change this. Well, you can change this if you want, but it's not going to work. So for instance, let's say we want to make the font bigger. So up here on this line, on line 8 is the font for the workspaces on the top left. I just changed it to 18. That's for the font on line 8. That's for the font in for your status bar. And line 9 is the font for D menu. So let's change that to 14. Let's save the file and let's log out. Let's get out of there. Let's quit out of there and let's go back in. Now you see nothing's changed. And if we go into Xterm, and so normally with DWM, when you make a change to the configuration file, you have to remake it. So like when you're using window managers like Qtile, the awesome window manager, i3 window manager, and most window managers, when you make a change in the configuration file, to get the changes to work, you just have to restart it. With DWM, you have to rebuild it. But when you build it from the AUR, there's no way to rebuild it. There's no build packages there. So let's try this. Let's CD into the AUR, W, and make package SIC. That's not going to fix it. Put the password in. So it's just remaking it. I know that's not going to work. And let's get out. Let's go back in. You see, there's no way to configure it. I mean, I want to have a clock up here, and I want to make the font larger for the status bar. I want to make the font for D menu larger. I want to put some key bindings in. So when you install it from source, let's just go back into here. Xterm, cd AUR. So when you install it from source, regardless of whether you use my script or my installer, or you just do it manually from source, you can change the configuration file, vim config.h. Okay, you can change, now see, even though we rebuilt it, it stayed. So I changed the font in line 8, I changed the font in the status bar to 18, and I changed D menu to 14. So when you install it from source, regardless of whether you use my script or my installer, or you do it manually from source, you can change this configuration file. You can put key bindings in, you can make all kinds of changes to it, but then you have to rebuild it, which doesn't take long, it only takes a second or two. And then your changes will take effect. And you can also add patches to it. So this is what happens when you install it from the AUR. So now I'm going to get out of there. Basically, you just have to use it the way it is. Let's get out. Let's quit. Let's shut down. Now, we're going to shut down this virtual machine, and it's off, so I'm going to close it. So now I'm going to go into my Linux Mint virtual machine, and I'm going to open it up, or open up my terminal. And just to show you it's Linux Mint, let's do Neofetch. And you can see I'm in Linux Mint 22.1, and we're using 798 megabytes of RAM. So let's just go to the store. Now you can install DWM in the terminal. Now I'm not talking about from source. You can do that too if you want, because that's the recommended way to do it. Let's just do, you can install it from the Linux Mint or the Apt repository in the terminal, but I'm just going to do it here. Let's install it. Let's click on install. Let's click on continue. Oh, it's asking for my password. Just going to take a second, and it's done. Let's close it, and let's log out. And let's click on this icon right here, and there it is there, DWM. And let's put my password in, and there it is. And it looks exactly the same as the DWM that we installed in Arch Linux from the AUR, the Arch user repository. The font is really small. In the status bar, there's no clock. It just has the version of DWM 6.4. And again, you can't change anything. Oh yeah, so let's open up D menu. And of course, the font in D menu is small. And here we have GNOME terminal. So let's open up that. Let's cd into .config, ls it. So in .config, there's no configuration file. Let's cd out of there. Let's clear the screen, and let's just look in my home directory. And there's no DWM configuration file there either. Like I said, if you install DWM from the AUR in Arch Linux, or from the official repository, the official Debian repository in pure Debian or Linux Mint or any other Debian-based distribution, you're going to get the default DWM, but you won't be able to make changes to it. So right now, I'm at the Debian Wiki. Did you know there's a Debian Wiki? Just like there's an Arch Linux Wiki, there's a Debian Wiki, and you can learn a lot of stuff from there too, where they talk about DWM, and they tell you right here that you can install it from the official Debian repository, and that's what happened when we installed it in Linux Mint. Now in Linux Mint, I went to their GUI app repository, but it's coming from here. And in Linux Mint, you can go in the terminal and install it too. It would be the same thing. So it's telling you when you install it from the Debian official repository, this is what happens. First of all, if you go in the terminal, you could just put this command in and install it. You don't have to write aptitude. You could just write apt. But it's telling you when you install it this way, just to prove my point, installing DWM in this manner will give you a fully functional but statically configured window manager. To make any customization, the source code will be required. See below for detailed instructions. If you go down below, they're telling you how to install it from source. Okay? But you don't need to do this. You can just go to the DWM website and install it from source, or you can use my installer. Really, it's just a script. And the reason why I went through all that is, like I said, someone made a comment in my DWM video where I'm showing how to use my installer in Arch Linux to install DWM from source. Someone made a comment saying it's easier to just use make package build, which I assume the person meant installing it from the AUR. And someone else wrote a comment saying, how can I install it in other distributions? And I wrote back saying my installer wasn't working in Debian, and I wasn't able to install it manually or with my installer in Debian from source, using my installer or doing it manually. Well, that's been fixed. So let's go back to here and let's close Linux Mint. Let's shut down now. Okay, and let's close that. Now I only have one virtual machine open, and it's Debian. Pure Debian, that is. So right now, this is pure Debian with the awesome window manager, and of course with my configuration file for the awesome window manager. And I'm just going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to type in Neofetch. And as you can see, we're in Debian 12 Bookworm. I'm running the awesome window manager. My terminal is xterm, and right now we're running at 315 megabytes of RAM. Not bad for Debian. So what I'm going to do is, let's clear the screen. So the first thing you want to do is, if you haven't installed my GitLab repository, you want to install it. So you're going to do this: git clone https://gitlab.com artivist1/mensch.git. So the first thing you want to do is, if you have never installed or downloaded my GitLab repository, you want to do this and download my GitLab repository. And this command is in the show notes of all my videos. But if you already downloaded my GitLab repository a while back, because I'm always making changes to it, and in fact, I just made a change to it the other day because I took my installer or my script for installing DWM, and I made another one with changes in it so that it will work in Debian and Debian-based distributions. So, like I said, if you installed my GitLab repository before, you want to cd into the Mensch folder. You want to do a git pull. Oh, but mine's already up to date. Okay, and if it's not up to date, it's going to update it. Okay, so let's clear the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is quickly, I'm just going to take you into the Arch folder in case you didn't watch my video I made a few weeks ago on DWM. Okay, so I'm going to cd into Arch, ls it. Oh boy, look at all this stuff. So see right here at the bottom, on the bottom left, there's a DWM folder. I'm going to cd into DWM, and I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to ls it. And this is my script for installing DWM in Arch Linux. Installer. So this is the installer for Arch Linux. I don't know if installer is the right word. I should probably just call it a script. But it's going to install dmenu, nitrogen, xset, xroot, slock, wget, and rofi. And then further on down, it's going to do all this stuff. And what it's going to do is it's going to install those packages. It's going to install DWM. with one patch and my configuration file in Arch Linux. Now, at the time when I made that video, this wasn't working in Debian and Debian-based distributions. And of course, you're probably going to say, well, you had sudo pacman in there. I know. I changed it to sudo apt, but it still wasn't working. And I even wasn't able to get DWM installed in Debian or Debian-based distribution, doing it manually, like from source, but typing in all the commands manually. I was getting error messages. So let's close that and let's get out of there. So let's just cd out of there and let's clear the screen. So what you want to do is, if you're using a pure Debian or Debian-based distribution, like Linux Mint or some other Debian-based distribution, after you've downloaded or updated the Mensch directory in your computer, you want to cd into Mensch. Let's clear the screen, let's ls it, and you want to cd into the Debian folder, which is right here. And let's cd into Debian. Let's clear the screen, let's ls it. And then you want to go into this DWM right here. This DWM folder, let's cd into DWM. Let's clear the screen, let's ls it. And you want to go into this, well, you don't have to go into it. You can just run the installer. Let's go into it. Then, and actually you should really always go into it. When you download someone's files from GitLab or GitHub, you should look at the source code to see what it's doing, right? So let's vim into there. So here you can see I have sudo apt. It's going to install dmenu, nitrogen, slock, wget, rofi, and these 4 files. Now, so down below, everything is the same as my script for Arch Linux. It's going to install DWM from source. It's going to install it with my configuration file, and it's going to install it with one patch. Now, the difference between this one and the one in Arch Linux, beside the fact that line 5 says sudo apt install instead of pacman -s, is I took exit xroot out of here because that was causing an issue. It was stopping the installer from working. And I added these 4 lines, line 11, 12, 13, and 14. As I mentioned already, before my installer was not working in Debian and Debian-based distributions, and I wasn't even able to install DWM from source manually by typing in the commands in Debian or Debian-based distribution, and it's because I didn't have these files. You need to have, whether you're using my installer or my script, or you just want to do it manually, you need to download from apt, from the Debian repository, these 4 files. And you need to do that in Linux Mint or any Debian-based distribution or pure Debian. So that's how this script differs from the one that is in my Arch Linux folder. So let's get out of there and let's clear the screen. So we're going to run the script. We're going to do /installer. Let's hit enter. Oh, it's asking for my password. I'm going to put my password in. And now it wants me to say yes or no because we're installing all these packages. I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to let it run through the installation. And I'm not going to pause the video because this is going to be really fast, I think. Okay. So what it's doing is it's using my script, which I call an installer, to install DWM from source. It's installing rofi, dmenu, and some other things with my configuration file and with a patch. Okay, so when we get to the place where we can see where it looks like it's paused or it's stopped and it's not working, but it is working. And you can see there's done, 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 done. There's 5 dones. When it gets to there, you can hit enter. Now I'm going to cd one out of there. Okay, so I'm going back to the Debian folder and I'm going to ls it. And now I'm going to cd into this st folder. Okay, so we're going to cd into st. I'm going to ls it and let's clear the screen. Whoops, let's ls it. And I have 2 scripts here. I have one to install st terminal. Now the st terminal is the simple terminal that comes with DWM, but you can use simple terminal in any window manager or any desktop environment. And the other way around too, in reverse. If you're running DWM, you don't have to use st terminal or simple terminal. You can use xterm, alacrity, GNOME terminal, or whatever your favorite terminal happens to be. So I have 2 scripts here in the st folder. I have install after DWM, which is the one we're going to use. And I have one that will install it if you don't have DWM installed. So I'm going to go into this one, and I'm just going to open it up so you can see what's inside of it. Vim install after, and that's what's inside of it. So this is going to install, this is going to download ST terminal or the simple terminal from source with one patch, the scroll back patch. Okay, so let's get out of there and let's clear the screen and let's type in this / install after Dwm, and let's hit the enter, and it's going to run through just like the other one. And now when you see it's paused, and let's count them. When you see it's paused, it looks like it's stuck and it's not doing anything. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 dones, you're finished. So let's hit enter. So let's clear the screen. Let's CD out of there. Let's clear the screen again and let's ls it. So now my script or my installer, whatever you want to call it, put a builds folder here. See this builds folder? We're going to CD into there, CD into builds, clear the screen. Let's ls it. And we have two folders now. We have an ST folder and a DWM folder. So I'm going to CD into ST folder. I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to ls it. And I'm going to run this script, st run patch. So this is going to put my patch into the simple terminal. And it's a scroll back patch. I'm going to do / st run. And the patch worked. And we know it worked because it said succeeded. Now I'm going to clear the screen. So now, while I'm still in the ST folder, now that I've run the patch, I'm going to make the file. I'm going to do sudo make clean install. And now we are building ST, the simple terminal, and that's done. Now I'm going to clear out of there. I'm going to CD. Let's CD back into the builds. Let's ls it. Let's go into the DWM folder. CD DWM. Clear the screen. Let's ls it. And I'm going to run the patch in DWM. And this is the patch that enables auto start to work. It's an auto start patch. And once you have this installed, you can put anything you want in your auto start file, and it will auto start when you load up the window manager DWM. So I'm going to run that patch. So I'm going to do / run, and we're installing the auto start patch. And it worked. And it worked because we can see everything succeeded. Now I'm going to build DWM. I'm going to do sudo make clean install, and we are installing, and there it's installed. So everything's done. So let's see if it works. Let's close my terminal and let's get out of the awesome window manager. Let's quit and let's call up this. And there it is, DWM. Let's put my name in here. Let's put my password in. And there we are. We are in DWM in pure Debian with my configuration file. So we can see we have nice, the workspaces are nice large print. Everything on the status bar is large print. We have the clock with PM, and it even shows you it's Eastern Standard Time, right? And the date and everything. And let's open up D menu. Now look how large D menu is. D menu is nice and large. And we have Rofi installed too. So let's do Alt R is Rofi, and there's Rofi. So you have Rofi installed. And my terminal is Alt Enter. Should open up. Oh, it's opening up Xterm. Okay, so I forgot that I had that in there. So now I'm going to show you how to change the configuration file. So what I'm going to do is ls it. I'm going to go into my builds folder. So I'm going to CD into builds, CD into DWM, and let's just clear the screen. Let's ls it. And I'm going to go into this config.h file. I'm not going to go into the config def.h because this is the default. I'm going to go into config.h. Now what I'm going to do is ls it. I just want to see something. Now you can see this config.h file is owned by root. So if you want to go in there and make a change, you have to use sudo. But in my DWM, I don't like using sudo to get into the configuration file, so I'm going to change the ownership. So I'm going to do sudo chown or chown, which is change ownership, mensch : mensch, leave a space, and type in config.h. And I'm going to put my password in. And you don't have to do this. You can just go in there and use sudo if you want. It's kind of a safety thing, I guess. So let's ls it. Now we can see we changed config.h to be owned by mensch. So let's ls it. So let's vim into config.h. What we're going to do is, so this is my configuration file. You can see on line 8, I have the status bar fonts at 14, and I have D menu fonts at 18, and it's there because I like large font. I like to be able to see what I'm doing. If you don't like that, you can change the status bar fonts, which is line 8, and the D menu font is line 9. You can change those if it's too large for you. You can change them to a lower number, but then you're going to have to remake DWM. So now what I'm going to do is, because my configuration file has xterm as the default terminal, so I'm going to change that. And where is that? It's right here. So line 65. So like I said, this is my configuration file. So line 65 has xterm as the default terminal. I'm going to change that to ST because we installed ST from source using my installer or my script. I'm going to change that. Oops, I messed that up, didn't I? ST. There. So we're going to change that to ST. And again, for this to work, we're going to have to remake or rebuild DWM, which only takes a second, really. Okay, so just while I'm in here, these are my key bindings. I have key bindings for Firefox, PCMan FM, OBS Studio, GIMP, Kdenlive, S-Lock, Thunderbird, OnlyOffice, and Calculator. Now, OnlyOffice won't work because I didn't install OnlyOffice in here. The OnlyOffice is not installed in here, and I keep thinking I'm in Arch, and I'm in Debian. So some of these things aren't installed in here. Like I don't have Kdenlive installed or GIMP installed because this is a basic install of Debian with the Cinnamon desktop, the awesome window manager, and now DWM. So if some of these key bindings don't work, like if you install this in Debian or in a Debian-based distribution and some of these key bindings are not working, it's because some of these apps are installed. Because really, this is the install script that I copied from my script or my installer for installing it in Arch Linux. So if you go down, for instance, mod key P. Now, the mod key here is Alt. You can change that if you want. Let's go up to the top. The line 48, I have the mod key as Alt because lately these days I've been using Alt as the mod key. But if you want the Windows or the super key, the Windows super key to be your mod key, then change this to a 4. Okay, so you should make it mod key 4 mask. Now if we go down, so mod key P, and let's just go here. See, mod key P is going to open up D menu. Mod key return is going to open up my terminal. And right now when you hit mod key return, it opens up xterm, but we changed it to ST. And after we rebuild the system, mod key enter is going to open up ST, simple terminal. Mod key P is going to open up PCMan FM. If you install OBS, mod key O is going to open up OBS. If you install Kdenlive, mod key K is going to open up Kdenlive. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if OnlyOffice is available in Debian or not. If you install LibreOffice, change desktop editors to LibreOffice, and then go up here on line 73, change desktop editors to LibreOffice, and then mod key O will open up LibreOffice. Mod key G will open up GIMP. Mod key R is going to open up Rofi. Mod key S is going to open up S-Lock. Mod key E is going to open up Thunderbird. Mod key C is going to open up GNOME Terminal. That's how the key bindings work. So every time you make a change in here, regardless of what the change is, you're going to have to rebuild the system. Like I said here on line 65, I changed the default terminal from xterm to ST. So let's save the file. Now we have to rebuild it. So we're going to do sudo make clean install. That's all it is. It only takes a second to rebuild it, but we have to log out. So we're going to do, and let's log out. So you can see here, just so you can see, this is pure Debian. I have Cinnamon installed, the awesome window manager, and DWM. Okay. And let's put my password in. Now we're back in there. Now let's see if the mod key enter opens up ST terminal rather than xterm terminal. And it works. There it is. We can see we're in the ST terminal. Let's do a Neofetch. And so now we can see we're in Debian. We're in DWM window manager and our terminal is ST. And we're only running at 248 megabytes of RAM. That's not bad for Debian because Debian runs usually higher than Arch Linux. It usually runs probably approximately 100 megabytes more of RAM, maybe 150 megabytes more of RAM. So that's not bad for Debian. And let's just do an Htop. 234 megabytes of RAM. That's really low for Debian. So you can see this Debian installation has 4 processors, 4 gigs of RAM, and 1 gig of swap. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know that I normally don't use swap, but the Debian installer threw in a gig of swap, which I don't mind because a gig of swap is not a waste. I just don't like those installers and distributions that match your swap with your RAM. that's kind of unnecessary, and it's a real waste. I mean, if you have 16 gigs of RAM, you don't need 16 gigs of swap. Or 32 gigs of RAM, or you don't need 32 gigs of swap. That's a waste. But I don't mind a gig of swap. With the ST terminal, we installed the scroll back patch. So let's do history, and let's put a 1 in there. So the scroll back, you're going to do shift page up, okay? And it scrolls back because your mouse is not going to work, right? Okay. So to scroll back, we're going to hold down the shift button and do page up. And you don't have to worry about missing anything because it goes page by page. You're not over scrolling and you're not missing anything, okay? And then you can go page down. And to make it large, you can just do shift, control, page up or page down. And let's say you want to change the font permanently in ST, then you're going to do, you're going to go CD into builds, ST, LS it. You're going to go into this configuration, config.h. And I think it's owned by root. Oh, it's owned by Mensch. So let's do Vim config.h. And well, let's just change that. Let's do color scheme evening. Oh, that's better. And let's change that font. Let's say you want it to be larger. Let's change it to 18. That's going to be too large, but let's save it. So we're changing the font permanently. Now we got to make it. So you're going to do a sudo make clean install. Put the password in. And let's close the screen. Let's close that. And now let's open it. Now, see, we permanently made the font larger. And that's it. In this video, I showed you what happens when you install DWM from the AUR, the Arch user repository in Arch Linux. I also showed you what happens when you install DWM from the official Debian repository in Linux Mint. And I showed you how to use my brand new script or installer to install DWM from source in pure Debian. Now, I didn't show you how to install or use my installer for DWM that I made for Arch Linux because I did that in my last video a week or two ago. And I talked about the difference between installing DWM from the AUR in Arch or the official repository in Debian or Debian-based distribution and installing it from source. And it's always recommended to install DWM from source because then you can make changes to it and configure it whatever way you like. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like it and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I am the Linux Mensch.